This is my Down and Dirty Weathering Contest 3 structure entry for Steve 87th. Hello, this is Steve 87th here. This is my inspiration for my structural entry into the Down and Dirty Weathering Contest number 3. It's a simple structure that's post and beam with plywood on the outside. And as you can see, it's mostly used to unload hard chemical fertilizer into. They have this building to keep the fertilizer contained, and it just kind of sits out here in the open. So just so that you guys know, this is not a kit build, this is actually a scratch build. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the scratch building so that you can see that I actually made this. Somebody else didn't make it for me. So we're going to go ahead, and this is my inspiration, and let's see how I made this thing look like it. Okay, so this is my pile of wood. We go ahead and start putting the sides together. We built them all up. Now we put the roof on so that we can get that going. We have to build up the roof section the way that I needed it to look with 2x4s. This is me doing that, and then this is the roof finished. All right, so then I had to do my roof. This is my first part of my painting. I primed some aluminum foil. However, the roof is not metal, it's actually plastic, but the priming came out okay, so that's part of the weathering process. Now that the building's nearly ready to go, I have to get some inspiration for weathering the sides of the building and finishing off how the building should look to start. All right, so while I still had the part bare and in wood, I needed to put the graffiti on because I wanted to have some of the weathering over top of it. So what I used for my graffiti was this Jelly Roll pen, right? It's a Japanese company, and it's an ink-based pen. And I also use some Eek Tools journaling pens. And you can see here that it comes in a set of 5 with 0.2, 0.25, 3, 4.5, and 6.5. So they come in various different sizes, which is kind of nice. You could also use the Micron pens too. That work really well. But these are really nice inks. So the nice thing about it, especially with the Jelly Roll, you can see here that the good thing about this is this comes out white, and it's really easy with a pen to actually do some of the graffiti, much better than say a Sharpie. Okay, so then I can come back in, go over this again, and you can see here that it's nice and white. All right, so that's one of the things that I liked about these Jelly Rolls. One of the cool things is, because my wife's in paper crafting, she has a whole bunch. So one of the nice things is if you have somebody who's doing lots of color, these things come in lots of color, you can come back after the white's dry and just come in and fill it in with like a blue color. Okay, you can see it almost goes on just like a paint. So that was how I did my white decal, my white, graffiti, okay? And it doesn't take much. And the cool thing is with a pen, you can actually use it as a pen, so it's going to be easier for you to do some of that stuff. All right, so no, I didn't use any fancy inks or anything like that. I just used what my wife had. And then you can see here with the Eek tool, this black also works really nice and fine. Now this gives me a really, really fine line. Okay, so that's my 0.2 size. I could go up higher, and you can see why it's so much easier for me to do it on just the unprotected wood. So that is your 0.2, which is your smallest. And now you can see here, I can go around that even with a bigger one. And then you could come back and color that in. So that's my nice little set, and that's how I did the graffiti that you'll see that's on the building. And so here's the example on the building of the white graffiti that was on there. It's kind of funny, it was both the same on both ends. So white here, and then black on the other side, and then there was some more white on the other side. Okay, so my method to actually weather this started off with washes. I didn't stain the building, I actually used washes because this is just a regular wood. So I used the Vallejo gray wash, and I also used the MIG enamel wash for vehicles. You can see here that my preferred method of application is using makeup brushes The good thing about the makeup brushes is if you wait till Christmas time, you can usually get a lot of these makeup brushes really cheap at like Walmart or something like that. They'll come in big kits and big cases. So you can see that there's all kinds of different brushes. The nice thing about these is they're meant for blending and meant for applying, you know, heavy items and powders and things like that, which is why I prefer to use those. So here I am applying the mixture of the washes over the dirt. I mean, over the wood. And you can see how the graffiti's over there, the graffiti's on this side too. So I just wanted it to be kind of a light gray. So one of the things is even though this isn't a stain, you can see how the building started warping. So I needed to do both sides of it. You can see that it's kind of hard to get into the edges. That's where I use that other blender brush. So once I got those done, and even though, again, this is a wash, so it is kind of wet, I had to weigh this down and leave it dry overnight to make sure that I had a square wall in the end. Because without the square wall, if I had a warped wall, it would have been really bad. So here I am. This is all I did with all of them. You can see the roof. You can see the two side panels, and both side panels are nice and flat. You can see how the graffiti came out, sort of. I kind of went a little bit fast there. And I got all of the walls. And I also did some extra stuff, which has to be done later. Right, that goes on the building later. So this is kind of where I had to weather as I went along. So then I put the building together and placed it onto a base. Okay, so next thing was to start taking care of the roof. All right, so you can see that I've got this glued to a base. There's a reason why I have to do that is because part of the weathering on this actually has to take place because of the ground that has to go around this. So I built the building and then I made the ground to go around it. So here I'm putting the roof sections on all the roof panels on the roof section. These are aluminum foil pieces that I cut out that are 4x8. But the thing is this is not a metal roof. It has to be a plastic roof. So once I get all of these on, I actually have it so that I can remove the roof because I can't have the roof on when I go do some of the inside work on the building. So I get all the panels on. You can see that they're sticking up a little bit. So I had to use a little weight to hold those down. Okay, so I had to do a little side project here. This is an auger conveyor, which got an auger in the middle of it. I had to build this from scratch because there isn't actually anything available in plastic or anything like that. So this also had to get weathered because it's part of the building. Okay, and here is the finished product. It's actually been soldered together. I clean it up and make sure that it's ready for paint, and then I'm going to do the paint process, which I'm going to explain next. Okay, so for this next section, I decided to try my attempt at using the Vallejo Rust and Chipping Effects kit. This is a really kind of cool kit. It comes with everything that you need except for your base color. So basically, it comes with an instruction, a step-by-step instructions book here that will tell you exactly how you're supposed to use this. And they give you all the paints. And what's funny is when you get them in the box, they're actually in the order that you're supposed to use them. Okay? So the first thing that you do, I'm going to show you how to do this, and I'll go ahead and throw the video up so you can see what I did. The first thing you do is you prime the entire thing, this German red brown. Okay, so that's your first prime, and it's all over on that one. Okay, the next one is your dark brown. Okay, so it tells you that you want to put this in kind of your heaviest areas that had a lot of rust. Okay, and you want to put it on sparingly. You don't want to put it all over. You want to put it in certain areas that would see more rust, or like along the crevices or the cracks or somewhere where it would be built up. Okay, the next color that you get to put on is regular rust. It's oxide rust. They tell you to put this on in little areas throughout the build. Okay, just kind of put it in sporadically where some of the rust is going to be, or in places where you really want to see some rust. The next one that we do is our light rust. Again, this gets put on in different little areas. You want to kind of put it in areas that you want to highlight, or places where it's kind of newer. All right, and also higher temperatures is where the light rust goes. And then finally, you're going to come over with this orange rust. The orange rust is supposed to be for where your high temperature areas were. So if you had some really heavy areas or near the exhaust, or like if you were doing a tank like this is, you'd want to put it where most of the wear and tear was at and all, which is the way that I did it. And then lastly, you've got the yellow ochre. Okay, so that's going to be your last layer, and you want to put that in certain spots that you feel are really needed. It's normally, let me see where that one goes. You want to kind of use a sponge in some places, and you can do kind of an overall effect with this to just dab it all over. Okay, and then finally, when you're done with that, you're going to go ahead and put on this chipping medium. Okay, so what the chipping medium does, you set it up. It's all water based, so you can cut this if you want. They tell you to put it on in strokes or with a brush or something like that. What you want to do is make areas where you don't want the final paint to go. So what's going to happen is all of these are acrylic colors, and this is even a water-based item. So you put this down wherever you don't want paint to stay. And what this does is it actually adheres the paint and makes it so that it won't be stripped away by the water. Okay, so those are all the things that you do first. Then you come up, and in my case, for the auger screw that I used a red. Okay, I think I used the scarlet red here. Okay, because it originally was a red tractor. So in other words, you're making it, now this one you paint all over. Once you get the paint down, you kind of do it in a fairly rather quick manner, where you take a brush, a little bit of a stiffer brush, and you're going to dip that brush in water, and you're going to go over the entire model. Okay, so when you're going over the model, what it's going to do is it's going to take away the acrylic paint that you just put on with your airbrush, right? It's going to take it out, but wherever, and it's going to keep it wherever you put the chipping medium. So that's what gives you that holding color of the item, and then the rust comes out from underneath. And they give you some techniques on how you can do flaking if you want, and all that kind of stuff. Once all that's finished, you come over it and finish it with a matte varnish. Okay, and that's what you're going to do. So now I'm going to do all of those steps in my airbrush booth, because these are all air paints. And that's how I paint up the auger. All right, so we're going to quickly go through all of those steps, starting with priming and putting in all of the different paint steps. I had a little bit of a problem trying to hold this thing up. It was a bit of a tough thing to paint, but I just went layer and layer and layer, just like I said. The last thing that I did was I used a brush to put the matte finish on, and then colored it all red. All right, my time lapse went a little bit faster. So after taking a wet brush to this, that's what that little bucket that you saw at the very end was a pail of the water that I took off of it. And so the paint needs to still be a little wet. You take a damp brush. I actually used a makeup brush to make it a little bit harder. And then you get in there and you start taking the paint off. The matte medium keeps the red paint where you want the red paint to be. I didn't quite do it exactly as I wanted to. It looks like I got more medium paint on there than I wanted to in places. I tried to sort of dab it on there or streak it on there, but apparently I put more on there than I wanted to. But it didn't come out too bad. As soon as it comes back in the screen here, you can see that there is some chonkers out of there. There's different layers and levels of rust that came underneath there. So basically what you're doing is you're rusting this whole thing, then you're putting a medium on it to keep the paint on there, and then you take the paint off that you don't want. Okay, so this next little section was washing up the vehicles, right? We've got to get them dirtied up. So I used this technique on both the tractor and on the auger bit. The first thing I did was I came across with a black wash. Okay, so the black wash comes up and gets you all of these nice little details. Right, it gets into those nooks and crannies so that you can see the details and they stay out there. This is the easiest one to get out because the other one's kind of attached to the building. The next thing I did was kind of put a modern US vehicle wash on it, from an enamel wash on that. What that did is it kind of dulled down everything from the bright red that you get from the plastic and then just made it kind of a nicer little duller type thing for an older tractor. So the next thing I did was I used some thick mud. And I took the mud, and you can see I put some of it in the wheels, just like you would see it. There's some on the undersides, up in the front section, in the back area and all that. Just kind of little clumps of mud here and there. And I also did that with some of the earth. So mud and earth were pushed in a few different places so that it looked like it had been worked on and all. After I finished with that, I put some splash marks on there, some splash mud. Okay, and this is where the mud goes when, you know, you splash through holes and all that. So you'll see it here in this box area. There's some, I got it up in this area where you'd see the different mud come up and splash over and all that. And then finally, since I live in the Pacific Northwest, all of them got a coat of the rain marks. So what I did with the rain marks was as you come up, you put it on, and it shows you to kind of put it on heavy. If you look at the picture, you can see that it's actually heavy on that train car. Well, I found out that if I took it and put it on and then wiped it off, you get that nice dirty window look, right, that we all like. And a little bit on where the white was and all that, and then just overall, because it's always raining out here anyway. So this is what I did for these two particular vehicles, and I used a similar technique pretty much on the rest of the building. Okay, this is kind of the before picture before I did all the weathering to these two pieces of items, and then this is the after with the auger and the tractor. So you can see that it's the same tractor that I used before. Okay, this was kind of a part that was essential to building this building the way that I did with the colors. As I'm inside, I'm hitting some of the mud and dirt with it. Some of the grass is getting over it. It's got to overgrow some of the areas. You can see the mud splashes up there and the mud puddles inside the tracks inside the building. So that's all part of the build. Okay, now I'm starting to finish up in this area. Using some of the ground cover and all that actually grows up on the side of the building, which is all part of it. The white snow I use is actually the fertilizer that they use in this whole area. So, and fertilizer had to be thrown up in the building as well. So now I've got the buildings up there, the sticks, you can see some of the stuff is getting in there. There's white powders that's standing on the most of the 2x4s and all that. Put up some dressings and some tarps that I made out of napkins and all. And you can see up there that the roof isn't done yet. So that's the next thing that we're going to talk about, is how we did the roof. And you saw that I also had to put, we're going to come back to it, I had to throw some other dirt and grass up on the side of the building because there's actually the foliage growing out of the building. So that's how I kind of handled that. All right, so now finally we're on the roof. I started off by using some track wash. Now the biggest thing is you got to remember, this is a plastic roof. It's not a metal roof, so I can't rust it that much. So I used some of the track wash first to give it kind of a duller coat and plasticize it a little bit. Then I came back across again with the modern vehicle wash. The wash went ahead and put a little bit of that dirt, kind of that little stuff that you see that's out there, you know, that kind of gets involved in those old plastic roofs. Then the next thing, because again, it's the Great Northwest, I had to put in some dark yellow ochre sort of thing. So this is representative of the mold and the fungus and stuff like that that grows, especially out here in the Northwest, where you're going to see it up on the rooftops and in the sides of the buildings and stuff like that. So I did a general overall wash with the yellow ochre. And then, of course, to finish it off, we use our rain marks all over the building so that I can go ahead and get a nice even coat of rain and stuff like that all over the building to dull down the roof. And to top it all off, I used a couple of the streaking brushes to put a little bit more streaks of dust on there. Make it a little bit harder so that there's some dust streaking parts on it and all that kind of stuff. And because these things are put in with nails, I used a very, very little bit of the rust where you can hardly see it. I know that it's there, so kind of where the nails had rusted off and they had drug down the roof. Okay, so that's how I did the roof and finished off the rest of the building. So here's a look at the building after it had been weathered with the process that I told you. So you can see it's not shiny, it's not rusty, it's really kind of dirty and got mold on it. And then over here, we kind of did the yellowing on the building as well to kind of bring that out and finish it off. Since this is a weathering competition, I wanted to go ahead and show you guys the weathering. I know that there's a lot of other stuff in the way of the building. So you can see that the truck that came up, the weathering that actually did occur to make the auger finished. So let's look at the building. Again, there's some more graffiti that was on the sides, as well as some of the holes in the building. These different areas were taken out. That's the way the building actually was. You can see here that it's got the different colorations on it. The roof, unsettled as it is. This is, you know, I mean, it's not an extremely well-maintained building. We've got the grasses growing up through. We've got the different layers of fertilizer that's been left behind. Went ahead and we got the nice little tarp sitting up over there. Some more of the roof details. You can see that a little bit closer. You can see that there is some aluminum that shows through, but overall it looks not like a metal roof. Yellowing on the poles. We've got details on the inside. We've got splashes that came up onto the side walls. That happens when the trucks are there. Okay. Coming over here, we have the yellowing on the side of the wall. This is where the sun mostly doesn't hit it. So with the wet weather, you're going to see all of the different weathers. You can see we've got some rust on there. We've done a few little markings there, a little bit of dirts and areas on that and so forth. The vines that have actually grown up around the building, and some of the obvious, not grasses, but bushes that are actually growing out of that marine plywood that was applied to the side. Boards aren't that great. They're not well maintained. It's just kind of meant to protect more than it is to be a watertight building. And you can see that we all of the 4x8 sheets of plywood that were used. We come over here, we've got the entranceway, we've got the concrete. You can see where there's the concrete and the dirt come up there, piles of dirt inside. We still have more stuff that's hanging on the 2x4s that are inside the building. More on the roof. It's okay that the roof has got some bends and all that kind of stuff. It does sometimes get hot, so it causes it to bend up in places because it is the plastic. More spaces down inside. The mud puddles, some more weeds. You can see in there, there's even the splashes on the side. Some mud that gets kicked up by the trucks. And then we finally finish off with the side over here. And then let's go ahead and go back over to the tractor just real quick. Some more details up on the top side. You can see how the rusting's coming through there. The mud, all the wheels stuck in the mud. Come down over here. The guy's working on the shaft. You can see there's all mud and dirt that's gotten into the shaft. And then the actual tractor itself. Kind of muddied up, ready to do its job. And this is actually the way that they turn it. So that is my building. It is a fertilizer offload. And this is Steve 87th for the Down and Dirty Weathering Contest number 3 for the structures entry. Thanks everybody for watching, and good luck to everybody in the contest. I don't know. Looks pretty much. Mine might be a little bit brighter, but I think I nailed this one.